Let's put the spotlight on the elections and the new government and what really should be the economic agenda of the new government. We here at ET now, of course, have kick-started this series, a 100-day agenda. Every day we've been getting you big CEOs and economists. And today joining us is another special guest, Dr. Subir Gokarn, former Deputy Governor of the RBI and Director at Brookings India, joins in on the show this evening. Dr. Gokarn, thanks for joining us here on ET now. Firstly, let's talk about the investment cycle. Do you think there is a magic wand, that the new government could potentially have that could revive the investment cycle? Because clearly the Cabinet Committee on Investment, or CCI, as a mechanism hasn't worked. What can the government do?
No, there is no magic wand. I think there are two critical components to it. One is a lot of the projects that have been launched, and presumably some of these fall into the CCI purview, are stuck for reasons other than cabinet clearance. There are all kinds of bottlenecks, both in terms of implementation, land and resettlement and other things, but also in terms of the overall business model itself. We've had so much churn in infrastructure. We look at the power sector. We have had an unprecedented addition to generation capacity in the last 5 years, but all of this has come up without a corresponding increase in the availability of coal. So you have capacity, but it's not being fueled. Now that means an absolutely critical priority on mining more coal. So what are we going to do about that? Otherwise our power sector gets affected, and through that our financial sector gets affected. So there are linkages and network issues which require a very, very holistic kind of perspective on infrastructure. All of the linkages are very important.
Fair point indeed on investments, but Dr. Gokarn, what can the government really do on the supply side to bring down inflation? So far, we have only really looked at monetary policy as means to bring down inflation. Yes, it's beginning to cool off and headline inflation is down to a 9-month low, but what else can be done?
I think we are really in a situation where the monetary policy's ability to bring it to, it can certainly contain it, but to bring it down, I think, is very much a supply side issue. And there we need to see very, very strong both a reorientation of incentives in terms of procurement and procurement prices and commitments, so that farmers have an incentive to shift to crops whose prices are rising, and then follow this up, supplement this with the usual mix of infrastructure, storage, transportation issues, which allow for food to be very efficiently reached from the farmer to the consumer, which is where a huge part of the cost problem arises. This is not going to happen overnight. It will take 2 or 3 years, maybe 4. But I think the signal needs to be sent that here's a strategy, which is what we did in the late 60s with the Green Revolution. Here's a strategy, here's a set of inputs that go into the strategy, who's responsible for what delivery. Put it together, somebody needs to coordinate it, and I think that's going to restore confidence that the government is coming to grips with the problem, which is what we need very significantly right now.
But let's talk about some more out-of-the-box ideas for the new government, Dr. Gokarn. Should the government also try and break new ground and look at the contentious issue of labour reform, something that no government has done for the last 10 years at least?
Absolutely. I think I would have included it in my list of priorities, but since you were talking about 100 days, I thought it was too much to expect it to enter the 100-day agenda. But it is without question, an issue on which we are fast running out of time. The NSDC, the National Skill Development Corporation, was a great start. But if you looked at the numbers in terms of people trained and employed, that were reported in the Finance Minister's interim budget speech, it's a drop in the ocean. We are never going to deal with our working age population, of which we will be very quickly, very soon, the largest repository of in the world. We will not come anywhere close to meeting people's aspirations if we don't get our labour markets and the employment generation process in order, which includes skill formation, skill creation, the mechanisms by which jobs are found, people holding jobs, and at the end of it a safety net, unemployment insurance and pensions. This is a package that is of critical importance, but at least let's get the jobs going. We can worry about the other bits of the other pieces of the puzzle as we go along. But getting people into the job market, getting people into jobs is of absolute critical importance. and more so, moving people off the farm, out of agriculture, into manufacturing. So without labor reforms, without labor market reforms, I don't think we will get any momentum on manufacturing, and that's really what I'm very concerned about as a potentially lost opportunity.
Dr. Gokarn, what about privatization? I know it's a dirty word for some section of the polity, but should we expect a statement of intent, at least on that?
I think we need to have a 3 or 4 tier strategy for the public sector, certainly all within the rubric of privatization. But the approach has to be, look, let's exploit, let's maximize value. If there are companies that are good to go as private enterprises, let's push them in there. If there are companies that simply need to be sort of, let's say, salvaged, then let's look for the assets that they have and make full use of those assets, whether it's real estate. Real estate is actually the most, if you want to look at the balance sheets of companies on a mark-to-market basis, I think the most valuable company today is the National Textile Corporation, because it's sitting on the real estate assets of all the textile mills that it got when they were nationalized. But it's really not, the assets are not productive in the sense you would attribute to machinery or equipment or technology. So let's make use of these. There's no point in sitting on these assets without them being productive. That doesn't help anybody.
Dr. Gokarn, thank you very much for being with us with your 100-day agenda for the new government. We just hope policymakers, no matter who occupies office in May 2014, is listening aloud to the battery of CEOs and top corporates, economists and, of course, opinion makers that we're getting here on our 100-day agenda.